When I first began to explore meditation, I really had these blockers, and you often hear me talk about blockers, these religious blockers. I grew up Pentecostal, and we looked at meditation as if it was something of taboo, something that, oh, we can't really do that. You want to tap into another level of your brain or whatever misnomers about it was. And I was challenged by my then yoga instructor to meditate on my message when I would go to preach on Sunday morning, and to look at the scripture and just spend time every day with the scripture. And that became a form of meditation, and it was my first introduction, and it was soft. He didn't push me. He challenged me to just look at what it is that you're already doing and spend time contemplating, being mindful of that, and allowing all other distractions to dissipate, and just focus in on that. And then, add the little breath work that we did, and then we began to fully expand. And what happened was I began to see text in a more expansive way, because I wasn't just passively looking at it from historical or grammatical or literal way. I was like diving into a deeper meaning that I wouldn't even knew existed within me, to pull all of this stuff out of something. Because instead of spending a few hours, if I spend half an hour a day in the morning, half hour at night, then it starts to resonate, and it became one with me. And that's what happens in meditative practices. If those of you who are listening, I wrote a program called The Mindful Marketer, where I use meditation tools to help you really, really find who your core audience is, your customer, who they are, and how now do we support them. And we support them through understanding their needs, under language models, that so that when they read our copy ad, they say, wow, he's talking to me, or she's talking to me. And that comes by spending time within yourself, just thinking about who they are. So meditation is expansive, and it can be used in various ways, for healing, for mental, for physical, emotional. But most of all, it needs to be done. In our upcoming book, Awakening I Am, I go extensively into a distinction between meditation, whether it's sound meditation or silent meditation, breath meditation, and prayer, because there is a difference. Prayer is more of verbalization, whereby meditation is we're looking inwardly at the mind. And for executives that are listening, this episode is going to be powerful for you, because what's going to happen is, because you have the responsibility of carrying the weight of your organization, whether you're a pastor or a thought leader, whatever you are, you need to really go in understanding how you're going to conquer that day. And then you need to unwind and not carry the day with you into tomorrow, because tomorrow's manna will not produce fresh fruit for the day. So my name is NaRon Tillman, and this is Walk in Victory podcast, where we sit you at the feet of the masters,
There's
and
something wrong with the
we
microphone.
have conversations involved. Today's session is going to be our guest. So is NaRon Tillman, and this is Walk in Victory podcast, where we sit you at the feet of the masters and have conversations to help you evolve your life. Today's conversation is going to be with our guest, Stewart. Stewart, how are you, sir?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for joining us today. If you don't mind telling our audience a little bit about yourself, and why was I so passionate about talking about meditation in my opening?
Well, I can, yes, it's very interesting. I can tell you how I got involved in this. I was very young. I was 16 years old. And I explained this on a lot of podcasts because it's a very interesting situation. I was in Miami Beach with my mother and my sister. We were vacationing, and we get a phone call from New York that we have to come home immediately. My father was in the hospital. And so we took the first plane we could to get back. I was 16 years old at the time. And we went to the hospital, and my father was literally had 106 fever. He was shaking in bed. He was in a coma. He didn't recognize my mother, my sister, or me. It was a very powerful situation, especially for a 16-year-old. And this went on for about a week. And then just before my father passed on, I went into his hospital room, and he was lying there in a state of total serenity. I could look into his eyes and see 1,000 miles. The room had light in it. It was unbelievable. I had never experienced anything like it. I took his hand and I said, "Do you know me?" And he shook his head, yes. I got up from the room and went out. I had to maybe go to the bathroom or something. And I met his nurse in the corridor of the hospital. And I said to her, "Tell me, what's going on there? I've never seen my father. I've never seen my father in such a deep state of serenity. What this nurse told me changed my life." She said to me, to her experience, just before people leave the world, before they die, they go into this deep state of, it's like they've let go of everything. All the tension disappears from their body, and they lie in this deep state of serenity. And my first thought was, why did my father have to wait 49 years, 2 hours before he died, to find any kind of inner peace? I said, why can't one find that in their lifetime and live with it? And I became obsessed with this. I said, "Stuart, you have to," I knew how insecure I was as a kid. I knew how neurotic I was. I knew all the difficulties of living in the world, having, what are you going to be when you get older? What are you going to do when you grow up? The whole stuff. And I said, I got to find somebody who can teach me how to master my inner chaos. And I went on a 9-year journey, half around the world, looking for this person. And of course, the ironic nature of it is I found him in my hometown in New York City. And how I found him is I was completely broke, completely broke. I was living on the floor of a friend of mine's apartment. And he had sent me a plane ticket to get back to New York from Paris. And I flew back and I was living there. He said, "Stuart, let's go out and have some dinner." I said, "Great." So we went out. There was a restaurant in the village we enjoyed, and we're walking on 7th Avenue South, and we came to an Oriental art shop, antique shop. And we're looking in the window, and my friend said, "Let's go in. You love this stuff, all these Tibetan things and Indian things." And so I said to him, I said, "Charlie, I'm broke. What am I going to do with there?" He said, "This stuff is very expensive." So he said, "It doesn't cost to look." I will never forget, doesn't cost to look. I walked in the shop. Standing in the middle of the shop was a man who, there was so much sweetness and energy and power coming out of this person that I was attracted to him like a magnet, like a magnet. And he started talking about himself and his studies with teachers in India and how what he's learned and et cetera, and showed me pictures of himself with teachers in India. And said to me after about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, he said, "If you want to come study with me, come back here tomorrow night." And as I was walking out of his gallery, I looked back and I saw light coming out of this person. And I said to this friend of mine, "I don't know what happened in there, but I got to go meet this man again." Anyway, we walking home, we go up. This friend of mine was living in one of those railroad flats, and you know, and kind of that kind of $40 a month apartments you got back in the 60s that enabled you to move out of your family's house and begin a life for yourself. He was living in a place like that. And we're walking up the stairs and we meet this guy named Ed Borden. And Ed says to us, "How would you like to have some tea in my apartment?" So I said, "Great, let's go. So we went into his apartment. This guy had like maybe a $500,000 Oriental art collection in his tenement apartment. And I said to him, "Ed, where did you get this stuff?" He said, "There's a guy in Greenwich Village named Rudy who has an art shop, art gallery. That's the guy I met an hour before." And I said to myself, "Stuart, the gods are talking to you." Once in your life, listen. Next day I went down there and he described a meditation practice that was exactly what I was looking for in my life. It was amazing. A meditation practice that didn't require me to go live in some ashram or monastery or in the hills of the Himal and become a sadhu and all this stuff, you know. It was a meditation practice that teach me how to get strong enough inside myself to not only connect with spirit, but to truly embrace life, life in all its dimensions, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, being in business, communicating with the world. I mean, it was amazing. And he said to me, all you need to learn is how to build a system inside yourself that is strong enough to do this. And suddenly, when you build, you master the internal chaos and you build that kind of system. He said, everything becomes your teacher. Everything is telling you what you have to build and grow, how you have to build and grow inside yourself. Even the most negative things in life, all the conflicts, the polarity, the disagreements, it teaches you something about yourself. Why did I attract this? Why did I bring this into my life? What is it teaching me about me that I have to change? And I'm telling you, the world became sacred when I learned to do this meditation practice. And what he worked with is something that's a little mystical, but it's called a chakra system. And these are energy centers that exist inside a human being. Each and every one of them is a direct connection between a person and higher energy in the universe or God or whatever you want to call it. And the wonderful thing is, it was non denominational. You could be Christian, you could be Jewish, you could be Islam, you could be, anything. You could be an agnostic and an atheist. The one thing that every human being wants, I don't care what their religion is or race is or they believe, they don't believe, they want to be happy. They want to feel their heart open. They want to feel joy, love, compassion for other people. And one of the reasons this is so lacking in life is that people don't build a system inside that's strong enough to do it. They don't know how to go into themselves where they're grounded, where they can truly ground themselves. One of my books I once wrote, a, if a tree is in a hurricane and has strong roots, it will never get blown over. If the roots are weak, it'll get blown over. And in most people, the roots inside them are very weak. They don't know how to develop that foundation, that grounding in themselves, and build a system that is strong enough to be able to weather the storm. And God knows, when you look out at this world we live in, there's a storm every 30 seconds. When you look out at this world that we live in, and how do you weather it? You're not going to weather it by fixing what's out there. I can't remember a day in my life where there hasn't been a war somewhere on the earth, where people haven't been starving somewhere on the earth. The only way it's going to get fixed is people fix what's inside themselves. They have to build a system that's strong enough to be able to live with an open heart, to live with love, to be happy people. Happy people do not fight wars. Happy people, learn from other people, listen to other people, grow because of how they interact with other people. And my teacher, Rudy, he trained me in this, taught me how to do this, not just words, but how to literally, pragmatically, and practically do this so that I could, learn to, well, as we say, work out my karma and deal with my activity. And I wound up, when I was a young kid, the last thing in the world I wanted to do was be in business. I really mean this. The idea was so repulsive to me that I'd have to go there and fight with people about money. And I finally realized, Stuart, if you don't learn how to get over this, you're going to be conflicted the rest of your life.
Mm.
I'll never forget, my teacher, Rudy, he asked me to go teach in Texas. I wound up in Texas for 9 years, actually. And he he said, go down there and you work. There's a young group of young people that are asking me to have somebody come down here to teach them. So he had made me a teacher in his meditation group, and he asked me to go down there. And I'll never forget, I started different meditation centers all over Texas. I was teaching in prisons. I was teaching at universities. I had a class in Kundalini yoga that was an accredited class in a Dallas university. It was unbelievable. And my day was like a 19-hour day. So we're standing on the porch of my house in Texas. Rudy was there, my teacher. And he said to me, Stuart, you're not working hard enough. I started to laugh. I said, Rudy, what do you want me to do? He said, buy that building. The building was a shopping center. It was a strip mall right next to the house where I was living. So I said, Rudy, I got $600 in the bank. How am I going to buy that building? He said, anyone could do it with money. That was his response. If you have $100 million, then what problem is it? You can go write a check and buy the building. If you learn to buy that, how to do this, you will learn a major thing that you have to learn in your life. A month later, I bought the building. And what it did, it got me over being afraid of being successful. It got me over the fear of money and being responsible to that money and learning how to use that money for a singular purpose, and that's to give life to my family, to my friends, to people I know, my students, to make it possible for them, to grow in their lives and to find their own creative way of living in the world. And it was extraordinary. And I eventually built the most successful restaurant that was ever down there, and went on. And then my teacher passed on, and it's a tragic story of how it happened. He was in an airplane crash, and I was in the plane with him. And I was holding it's a true story, and I was holding his hand while we hit a mountain in one of these four-seater planes. And the only reason I'm sitting here talking to you, honestly, is his soul force came into me when we hit that mountain, and he saved my life. That's why I'm sitting here. And I look at myself in the mirror every day. You're a living miracle. Who survived something like that? At any rate, my teacher was probably one of the biggest dealers in Asian and Oriental art in the world. But he used all the money he made in order to support his meditation and all the spiritual things he was doing. And after he passed on, his mother called me up. I'll never forget this as long as I live. And she said to me, Stuart, how would you like to buy a couple of truckloads of art from me? So I said to her, Ray, you know where I'm living? I'm living in Texas, and this is conservative Christian. I'm afraid the Ku Klux Klan will come and burn my house down if I start, using, Krishnas and Shivas and all that. So she said to me, think about it. So I thought about it for 10 minutes. I called her back. The first thing I thought about, where are you going to get another opportunity like this in your life? So I thought about it, called her back and said, Ray, I'll do it. And I'll come up and we'll talk about it. We'll fill up 2 truckloads of art. I put myself in debt for about $175,000. In today's money, it was probably close to $2 million. I and I had about $1,000 to my name when I did this. And I said, how are you going to? And I said, I would sit down every day in this meditation that my teacher taught me, work to connect with a higher energy to give me the strength to take care of this situation. And eventually it worked. I got the strength to pay back the money, to build an incredibly successful business in the antique world, selling to museums, selling to, all the top collectors in the world. And it was amazing. And it all came from this higher energy. It came down and kept building me and giving me the strength and the clarity to function every single day of my life under that kind of pressure. And it also taught me another thing. You know, look, there's a lot of greed in the money world. We all know that. I mean, people, they start out with good principles and then it becomes money and power. That's what money is all. And And eventually, initially, it really, what's the reason for material things? To get happy. Why do we get married? Why do we make money? It's supposed to bring an open heart and love. And you rarely, if ever, see anybody living in this world. And I used to deal with very wealthy people when I was in the art business. I never met a happy person,
Mm.
somebody who had joy in their heart and love inside them. And it was always about, you know, making the next sale, making the next amount of money. What do I have to do this? And I said to myself, I can't live that way. I cannot live that way. I said, this is teaching me that I have to get strong enough in myself to be able to live every day of my life with my heart open and to be able to have compassion for other people and love for other people and to be able to do this spiritual practice that I do so that I can nurture other people and help them to grow in their life.
Well,
It was,
sorry, go ahead. I was
no, go ahead.
with over close to probably like 60 years of practice under your belt. And what I
No, it's, yeah,
50,
50. I've been doing 50 years.
with over 50 years of experience, you've lived through the different fads in that, the 80s, the we have different iterations of mindful work and meditative work. My first introduction to any of this work besides biblical, which I grew up, was through energy Pakwa, which is Asian. So I did energy waves 1 and 2 before I did any meditation. I studied energy, so I resonate with you there. However, where we are today, 2025, how has that industry evolved, and with you in it? How was that evolution for you personally when you started to see lending back off of the greed, where everything became trendy and more about money and not happy, healthy people? How were you able to navigate through all of those cycles and remain true to your original teaching and not get caught up in that?
I'll tell you exactly. I mentioned earlier that every human being has a system of chakras, energy centers inside themselves. The real power in a human being is not here. It's not in the emotions. It's right at the core of their being, directly below the navel. There's an energy center that, the Japanese call this the Hara, the Chinese, the Tatien. In Hinduism, Buddhism, it's the third chakra. It's right below the navel. This is the core of the power in a human being. When great singers learn to sing, they sing from there. Great dancers, when they really dance and they're in that zone and they're dancing from there, they're not in their heads thinking about it. Understand? They are connected to that force because they're right in the foundation of that is what enabled me to do what I'm. That is the first principle in the meditation practice that I teach. The first thing my teacher ever said to me, he said, the strongest instrument you have is the human mind. He said, and it's making everybody crazy. It's full of polarity, it's full of tension, it never shuts up. It just acts on into infinity. And learn to focus the attention, your mind, on this chakra right below the navel, and it will become a surgical instrument that will open the very core of your being. The next step is to open the heart, right? Because a closed heart, it just becomes a shell of a person. And I discovered the easiest way to open one's heart is gratitude. We all have something to be grateful for. So in the meditation I teach, the mind is focused below the navel. We feel gratitude. We don't need, the mind to open it'll just get in the way. We have to just feel gratitude. And then we use our breath to expand the chakra. The breath is life. Every time we inhale, we take in life. Every time we exhale, we let go of a part of ourselves. Breath is very powerful. And breath is the energy force that will expand the heart center, expand the chakra below the navel, and enable us to build a system inside that is strong enough to do what you asked about. And in order to do that in my business world, I mean, my business world was full, I mean, it was a very strange world, the kind of people I used to meet. And in order to deal with them, I had to build that kind of system. And I was just using the meditation practice I learned from my teacher, and it enabled me to connect with spirit. And that energy would come down and it would nurture me. And I discovered a very important thing in doing this. There are three elements in life. You know, the first one is we're born on the earth. We're not born in the cosmos. We're not born in heaven. We're not, the soul comes as a body on. We have to learn something about living here, you know, and what we have to learn is ultimately how to become a happy person. Now, we all know that life is a very powerful energy. And, you know, it has people wrapped up in chains. You know, it's so strong. People can't deal with it. You know, we need to get strong enough to be able to deal with it, to be able to open our heart and interact with life with compassion, with love, with happiness, with understanding that everybody in this universe is undergoing some kind of suffering or another. And we have to approach and, you know, talk to and live with them that way with an open heart. The second level, you understand? And the second level is spirit. Everybody thinks spirit is some kind of quasi hors d'oeuvre type. And, you know, I mean, look, you know, a book I used to read years ago, the Bhagavad Gita, they used to talk about when Krishna reveals himself to Arjuna, when God reveals himself to his servant, it's as if the light of 1,000 suns suddenly appeared in the sky. That's how powerful that energy is. And if you don't have a system inside that can deal with that kind of energy, it'll just burn you up. People get, I mean, there really are institutions and, you know, where there are many people that have had these experiences. They don't have the power in themselves to deal with them. They've taken LSD, they've taken DMT, they've taken some kind of drug that opens up that whole channel of energy and it just burns them up inside. And the third element to this is a thing called Kundalini. And people used to ask me, what is Kundalini? And I would say, it's Italian ice cream. Leave me alone. So, leave me alone. You know, but anyway, Kundalini is an energy at the base of the human being's spine that is the pathway to enlightenment. The activation of Kundalini allows the soul to move up the spine to the crown chakra and out and embrace the energy of the cosmos. Kundalini is also a powerful force. So a person has to build that kind of inner strength to live in the world, to be connected to spirit, and to get free of the world.
Yeah.
That energy, that kind of meditation gave me the capacity to deal with all the kind of crazy people I met in my business. In fact, I stayed in business because I really enjoyed meeting these people and seeing if I can deal with them in a conscious way. They were my teachers. They were my
That's the best way to learn by like the polarization, right? We think that because we view the world through the lens of love, that we'll attract people that think that way. No, opposites will kind of attract. How can you sustain your principles when you're around a room full of hate? That's where the power comes at. It's easy uh, to transmute or to talk love, or to when you're in a room full of people that's talking love.
people feel it from you.
Yeah.
You understand? I'll tell you an interesting story. I used to deal a lot in crafts and things like that from India. And I've been in India about 40
Mm.
times, you know, life, you know, and I used to go over there every 3 months, I would, about three, 4 times a year. I would go to India, and it was to stay in my business doing that. I also did pilgrimages. I went to shrines and I met a lot of teachers and stuff like that. They published some of my books in Mumbai, and I used to give lectures there. This was years ago, like 10, 12 years ago. At any rate, I went into a gallery and there were about 5 or 6 salesmen in the gallery. And they saw me walk in the door and they literally saw dollar bills. They attacked me. They literally attacked me. I'm standing there with these 6 guys around me trying to get any way for me to buy something from them. So I said, look, excuse me for a second. And there was a big statue of Ganesh, the elephant god, Shiva's son. And I went over there and I took 100 rupee note and I put it right at the base of Ganesh. And that you're supposed to do that, because Ganesh is the overcomer of obstacles in Hinduism and et cetera, et cetera. It's not that I'm a Hindu, I'm not. But some of their, anyway, it was fun. They all came up to me and said, are you a Hindu? So I said, no, but I really have a love for Ganesh. I think he's just an extraordinary character with his elephant face. And all of these guys changed. All of them changed. And they wanted to know more about me, what I did, what I taught, et cetera, et cetera. And by the time I left there, every single one of them lined up and came and gave me a hug and said, thank you for coming. And I didn't buy one thing from them. And that was the most extraordinary thing of all. They had nothing there that I was really interested in. And they all came up and gave me a hug and thanked me for coming into their shop. And you see, it's what I can only say it's through doing what I do that the energy transform, and you give off a kind of vibration to people that even changes them in the way they deal with you. Not everybody,
Yeah,
but many
for many
people,
people.
you know?
Well, there you have it, everyone. You just had a masterclass of someone who's been not just doing the work, but has been walking with this knowledge and continue to build. Uh, my last question for you: how important is it for you in this day and time where we are, where we have so much at our fingertips? Like you said, there's never been a time in your life that there wasn't wars and stuff like that. But when I was coming up, we didn't hear about it except for probably like once out of the week, ABC News, headline news, Sunday New York Times would cover certain world news. Now everything is so readily accessible to us, where people are just so nervous. The nervous system can't really take those continued uploads of all of these negative clickbaits and negative headlines. What are you saying to your students about staying grounded and really tapping into that brain, that heart brain, and the mind brain? Because people just think it's just one brain, but each of those chakras that you talked about has its own brain, and then being able to connect those brains and finding peace in the midst of this chaotic.
The chaos. Look, my teacher said it better than anyone. He said, it takes 9 months to have a baby. It takes 1 second to die. I said, in 1 second, you can identify with all this negativity, but to build a system inside yourself that is strong enough to deal with it, you have to have patience
Mm,
and you have to be willing to work on yourself for the time it takes for you to get that kind of inner strength.
mm,
And we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things wrong. People are going to be crazy around us. It's all part of the test. Do we have the patience to learn what can help us get strong enough inside to be able to embrace life and not allow the kind of chaos that goes on today to truly affect the happiness that's deep inside our hearts? This takes work. I always tell people, you want to be a doctor, it takes 12 years of education. If you go out there and be a doctor without the education, you're a dangerous person. Same thing with a lawyer, a plumber, a carpenter, an accountant. You got to get an education. You got to learn what you're doing. The most complex person to learn about is oneself.
wow.
Much easier to become a plumber and a surgeon than to learn how to master oneself. Takes time. Takes my teacher Rudy, who God bless, just before I went to Texas, he told me this, and he said to me, Stuart, if anyone ever asks you who the guru is, you tell them the guru is life.
Because
And
life will teach you about yourself.
that's right. That's right. And I realized over years of working, I am not a guru. You understand? My job is to help people build a system in themselves that really enables them to sit in front of the real guru, which is life. Because life, every minute of every day, is teaching us something about ourselves. We have to learn to listen.
Wow.
Now, the answer to your question, honestly, patience,
Patience.
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 Do it a step at a time. Don't think it's going to manifest and happen in 3 weeks.
Patience.
No, it takes time, patience. It
Patience.
takes work on yourself.
Patience work experience. Yeah.
You got to go through the minor leagues before you get
It's
to the major
majors.
league.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if you're a whiz, you still got to go down there and pay your dues.
You got to go down, pay your dues.
Yeah.
In the minor leagues, there's all that chaos.
Yeah.
Learning how to get through it, master it, and transform. And I can promise you it's possible to do. And I only talk from my own experience. I don't talk about having read about this in a book. I talk from my own experience that this is possible to do.
Everyone.
Can't
Okay.
hear you.
Here I go. Everyone still is now.
Hmm?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you now.
All right. All right, everyone. So all of Stewart's information is in the description. You have a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of a library of books. We want you. There you go. The Jura meditation, transforming life tensions into joy and love. This is something that is necessary for us to really, really tap into. Hit that link, go and support, buy the book, share it with your friends. We want to build
They can get it.
happy,
They can get it
healthy
on Amazon.
people.
They can get it on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, Walmart, any bookstore that is connected to Ingram, the biggest distributor in the world of books, will be able to get them that book.
Hit like, subscribe, and share. Share this conversation with somebody that may need it. We all need to find peace, joy, and happiness, especially in this day and age. Don't walk making excuses. Don't walk with your head down. Don't walk looking backwards. Together, we walk in victory. Now, Stewart is a part of our Walk in Victory family. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.
Thank you. Thank you. You too. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That was awesome. That was awesome. This will be out next week. Everybody's home.